and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will now introduce the Board of Directors. Jonathan Henderson could not be with us tonight, but we have Mike Rowley, Madeline Maitanon, I'll get it eventually, sorry about that, Tasha Woods, and I'm Jason White. We also have one of our student reps here, Chloe Matson, along with Superintendent Ginger Haberer, as well as Executive Director of Student Services, Kelly Crunkmeyer, and Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Kim Snyder. Just a quick note about our agenda for those of you in person and board. We have a closed, let me look at my agenda here, closed session that's going to start about 7 o'clock. So because we have a lot of people here for public comment, I'm assuming, I would like to move that wherever we are at 6:30, that we cease where we're at and we open public comment. So that way we can allow those that are here the opportunity to speak. So that way we don't go into a closed session and then you all are sitting here waiting on us to return. So board, I'm looking at head nods. Are we okay with that? I think that really respect and appreciate our community coming out tonight. Okay. So we will watch the time, and Leslie, can you help us with that to make sure at 6:30 we stop to allow for at least 30 minutes of public comment. Okay, let's jump right in. So first on the, sorry, lost my spot. First off, we have the consent agenda. And again, we've had time to review the consent agenda. We also had time in our study session to ask any further questions. I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
I second.
All right, Tasha has moved that we approve the consent agenda. Mike has seconded. Any discussion? Then I will call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have administration. So Ginger, first up, we have celebrations, computer science, Tiffany Price.
Yes, so Tiffany, would you like to go to the podium? Our computer science pathway really starting actually all the way back from the elementary with the robotics club. And I know that Joelle Bose does a lot with technology and computer science and coding in her classroom. And then Tiffany gets our students as they go to the high school and has a lot of different celebrations to share with us. So go ahead, Tiffany.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really want to, I feel like it's so important to be able to recognize our student achievements and celebrate all of the accomplishments that they're making. And so today I put together a slide presentation that is representing the student work, the different innovations that we've been creating.
And Tiffany, if you could talk more into the mic, I just want to make sure everyone can hear you. Thank you.
Is that better? Oh, okay. All right. Yes. So next slide. Yeah. So the next slide is Joelle Bose. She teaches computer science at the middle school. And Joelle and I have been working together for approximately 6+ years, helping work together and support each other in our computer science, and also seeing what we can do to help our students and their achievements. And I think if you hit one more, you'll next one. I know. Thank you, Leslie, for all your support. You're a lot of multitasking. I think it's pretty incredible. Yeah. So Joelle and I have a pathway that starts, I think, as Ginger said, that it definitely starts at the elementary school, and we're looking to help even facilitate that more by bringing in coding camps for kids over the summer, as well as Girls Who Code to help promote at the younger ages. And we are very thankful for all of the work happening at the middle school as far as coding and Vex robotics. That's all really exciting because by the time I get them, they're raring to go and they're ready to apply the skills that they've learned and continue to grow. Yeah, so these are classes that are offered at Morgan. Oh. Okay, guess what? I have a backup because that's not quite the latest one. And I know you're short on time. Do you have time to load up the latest one or no? It's okay if you don't. I could definitely wing it. I know we're short on time and I'm so sorry. But I brought a backup.
I know, I feel bad. I know we are short on time, so.
It's on a USB. So Joelle has students and they are working in her different classes. She's got video game design, app design. She's got a Vex robotics class, web development. And it's really exciting because I'll be able to have these kids and they come into my classroom and be able to see that the work that they've done and then help promote and grow those skills to help them be career ready. And what's really exciting about today, where we are in society, is that regardless of what career a student wants to pursue, all of these skills are going to be beneficial. And what's even more exciting than that is that they don't necessarily pertain to pursuing a computer science career. What I love is when a student takes what they've learned and they bring it in and it goes in a cross-curricular mode where they'll find other classes where they can start to apply what they're learning to help bring out different concepts that they're learning in their other classes. For example, if you're doing a book report, you can create a web page and a nice website to help show the different features that you've been learning. That's perfect. Oh, slide. Yeah, great. Yep, there's Joelle. Hi, Joelle. Oh, that might still be the old one. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Oh, well, you know what? This is technology. And probably the most important lesson we all learn in tech is that you just got to go with it. So yeah, okay, yeah. So we'll go back to the other screens, the beginning. So I don't want to hold you too long. So if you just go one more screen back, we'll be good, and I can go other direction. Sorry, Leslie. Yeah. Yep, perfect. Okay, yay. Okay, so we're Joelle has a lot of video game design, which is really exciting. She's featuring students are learning JavaScript, but they really don't know that, and it's an industry language that is highly sought after. So they're building their skills, troubleshooting, creativity at the middle school level, and then we also have video game design at the high school. And what's really exciting, by this time they're getting into three-dimensional art, and there is animation involved with that as well. So though it looks like maybe I'm just hitting a moving object, there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes to actually make that happen. And those students get to learn problem solving, industry game design engine, which is Unity, which is used by a lot of indie developers. You may have been playing a game created in Unity, and it leads to certification in Unity game design, which is another industry certification. And it leads to a career in video game design. Next slide, please. The next slide is featuring Python. This is a student work where the student created a Python application building a phone book. So we all have phone books. This student created an app to actually store contact phone numbers and names and can pull it up. It might seem like a very basic application, but this kind of information leads to careers in software development and artificial intelligence, web design, and it's another one of the leading software programming languages out there in industry today. So that's really exciting. It also, they have an opportunity to earn industry certification, the Microsoft Technology Associate certification, which is really exciting. To have a student leave high school with industry recognized certification that they can just publish right there on their resume and come into an interview having that a little bit of edge on any competitors. Yeah. So, yay, there it is. Okay, next slide. And the next one is Java. We feature a Java programming class. It's computer science A. And this particular student created a physics calculator for her AP physics class. And that was really exciting because she took what she was learning, the content she was learning in her physics class, and was able to build a calculator to help calculate the different things that they are learning. And I've seen this also done in biology. I've had students create Python programs to help some of the equations and different things that they get to do in biology too. So thank you. Java is another leading programming skill. So cybersecurity, we have our first cybersecurity class this year at Ellensburg High School, and the students, it was a huge success. And not only that, what's successful to me is that students are leaving this class with industry skills. A cybersecurity analyst, believe it or not, I know this is what? Cybersecurity is the hottest job in 2022. And that's over and above healthcare, which I was surprised. But then when you take a step back, you realize that there's so much technology out there that it's requiring cybersecurity tools and skills to help support and keep our system safe. So we have our cybersecurity class. We had 7 students earn an industry certificate in their cybersecurity class, and many of them are excited to go on and pursue a career in cybersecurity. We also have a student club called Cyber Patriot, which is a nationally recognized club, and the students get to compete against other schools and teams across the whole country. And our EHS had 5 teams compete this year, which is the biggest number of teams we've ever had, which was exciting. And we made it to state. And I show a picture up there of one of our leading highest scoring teams. Also, and there's another, in a different version of this, I wanted to recognize Melissa Lopez Barbosa. Some of you may remember her. She graduated from EHS a few years ago and went on to go to Central. She got an internship in cybersecurity, which she still has. And she is pursuing a cybersecurity career, and she's doing amazing, and reached back to EHS to say, how can I help support students to encourage them to pursue this as a career? And so that's just really exciting. So next slide, please. So web design is another area we support students. And I just want to draw attention that the artwork that you saw, that was done by one of our students. And so we really share our students, right? I really feel like our students reside in a community where all of our teachers work and help develop their skills that they are really excited to express. So not only is this a website, but it's also the artwork itself was done by one of the students on the team, and they placed at TSA in 4th place for software development. Next slide. Okay, so I had more. Part 2. I appreciate your time. I thank you. I have more to show, but that's on a different slide. But anyway, I have students, we have students doing artificial intelligence projects right now where they're able to show a camera, and through the camera is doing image recognition and being able to sort, right? So if it's, okay, for a cereal, for example, you know, if Lucky Charms, okay. If it's a marshmallow or a regular piece, non-marshmallow, it can actually sort it. But what does that lead to? Well, that can lead to a lot of other things that those students can start to apply those skills. So these are the kinds of skills we're able to grow in our students to help them be successful in their future. And so again, I just want to be clear that I'm not here to make sure that everybody becomes a computer scientist when they leave Ellensburg High School. Right? My goal is to help, and I think we all share this goal, is to help make sure that our students are career ready. And the interesting thing about our students is that they face a career or a whole society that is completely different than what we started in, and I can guarantee the way that they look for jobs is not the way I used to look for jobs. I used to look in the paper, and they don't do that. So it's really important that we equip our students with the skills that they need for their future. And that's what's really exciting about this program is it's just helping facilitate and grow those skills here so that our students can stand a chance and can be competitive and get those high paying jobs, because all the jobs, all these projects lead to, and no joke, jobs that pay from $80,000 all the way up way over $100,000. And that is just a nice thing to be able to offer our students. So anyway, I thank you all for your time, and thank you for our amazing students. So we're very lucky. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Great, Tiffany, really quick. Sorry, I said a few comments really quick, I promise. You kind of threw off there the student who did the phone book with Python. You're like, oh, we
Yes.
all have phone books.
Yes.
We don't all have phone books anymore that look like the way they did. So that was really cool what he created, because we now interact with something as simple as a phone book in a very different way
Yes.
than we did 10 years ago.
Right. Thank you.
Then you said EHS, we're not trying to, like, your goal isn't to make everyone a computer scientist. I just want to thank you as a member of the board that this is a 21st century literacy, in the same way that we don't expect all of our graduates to be mathematicians or to be novelists or to be journalists. We expect them to know how to write and to think like a mathematician.
Yeah.
And in this world right now, it's really important that everybody has computer literacy and computer coding, because it's surrounding us. And so with that question, can any student take these classes or these pathways that only certain students can take them? Or
What a great question. Everybody can take these classes. Yeah, I mean, there is a pathway, right? But there's an entry, and I see we have freshmen who come into AP Computer Science Principles, depending on how much experience they have, but we also have an intro to computer programming for someone who hasn't had any exposure or experience with it. So, and I think that that's been something that I have, and I know Joelle and I, and we've all been very aware that we need to make this accessible to all students. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. And I will talk for a very long time, so I promise I won't. But I think it's really important that that door has to be open to everybody, regardless of where they come from, regardless of what skills they have. I had a young lady walk by, and I said, hello. And she said, hi. And I said, hey, are you interested in taking computer science? She said, no, I don't know how to use a computer. And I said, oh, do you have a cell phone? And she said, yeah. And I said, my friend, that's a computer. Okay, that's a computer. The computer that I worked on for my career is different than the computer that our students are going to work on when they get their jobs. I promise you, it's going to be a cell phone. It already is a cell phone. I don't know how many of you do your work on your cell phone. It's right there. And so it's really important to draw those connections into students and help them see that, and also help them be able to create and innovate using their computer as well. So thank you for those questions.
I just want to thank you for your obvious passion
Okay.
and your advocacy for our students, because it really is a foundational literacy now. And for someone that's old like me at 46, no, it was Oregon Trail. And that was exciting. And then I know that you do Cyber Patriots, and that has been a huge amount of your time on Sundays, supporting students and doing that competition. So thank you for being there for our students.
Thank you so much. I will say that's a 6-hour competition. But again, it's for them. And so whatever experience we can give to students to help them get those skills. I got paid to do what they're doing in Cyber Patriot. I got paid to do it. And it cracks me up, because I'm working with 15-year-old students right now, working on a computer that I used to get paid money to build and support in the way that they're working on it. And so it's just one of those mind shifts that, wow, we can actually put technology in these students' hands at very young ages, so that by the time they get into a job perspective and are applying for a job, they have that edge. And that's all we want to do, is help prepare our students for their future. That's it. And I feel like we're doing that. I feel like we are so lucky to have the support we need to make it all happen. So thank you. Thank all of you and thank all of you. So, and thank you, Leslie, for making it happen.
All right, thank you. So next agenda item, we need to induct our new board member. So Ginger, take it away. And just a reminder, you may have to move the mic just to make sure everyone can hear. So.
So welcome. We're so excited to have you, Madeline. And I am going to read the oath that all board members take to be on the board. And so I will read the oath and just ask you to repeat after me. All right. I, Madeline de Maintenon,
I, Madeline de Maintenon,
do affirm that I am a citizen of the United States
do affirm that I am a citizen of the United States
of America and of the state of Washington,
of America and the state of Washington,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
and will to the best of my judgment,
and will to the best of my judgment,
skill and ability,
skill and ability,
truly, faithfully,
truly and faithfully,
diligently and impartially perform the duties of Ellensburg School District Board Member
perform the duties of Ellensburg School District Board Member
in and for Kittitas County, Washington,
in and for Kittitas County, Washington,
as such duties are prescribed by law.
as such duties are prescribed by law.
Right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay. I'm very excited about that. All right. So it is now 6:27. I think, board, it would be great for us to go ahead and move into public comment. So I want to honor the people that are here. So Leslie, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and get us set up for public comment. Because we do have quite a few people here tonight, I think we're going to try to accommodate as many people who are here in person. So we will go through that list first. So, and I do want to point out too, this is back-to-back board meetings. We've been doing a lot of open public comment, which is great. This is what the board wants. So again, thank you all for being here. So those of you, just getting back to my script, individuals wishing to be heard by the board will add their names to the document in the Zoom chat. Well, actually onto the sheet that Leslie has. If you are unable to do so on Zoom, and if we have time for Zoom, you will raise your hand so that we can see you. Again, we'll base this all on how much time we have. We are going to limit this to 30 minutes. Let's see. Once the chair calls on an individual, they will identify themselves by stating their name and address for the record. Individuals will proceed to make comments within a 3-minute time limit. In order to provide equal opportunity for comments, an individual's microphone will be turned off at 3 minutes. The chair may interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. The board as a whole has the final decision in determining the appropriateness of all such rulings. In accordance to the Open Public Meetings Act 4230, agendas and topics must be set in advance of the meeting. Board members will not respond to public comment during the meeting. Also, I would like to point out, if any individual would like to request a response from the board in writing or a response from the board, please submit this request in writing or via email at board@est401.org. Leslie, are we ready to open public comment?
We are.
All right, perfect. So call your.
First up is Sonia Mitchell.
All right. And there will be a timer that's set for 30 minutes.
Sure.
So thanks, Sonia.
Hi, my name is Sonia Mitchell and I live at 1193 Nanham Road. And my husband and I have over 200 acres out in the Nanham district. And so a large portion of our property taxes does go to the Ellensburg School District, which my husband and I have always been very happy to do because we raised our 2 kids here and we support the school district. What I have heartache with is the reassigning of the librarians. I really strongly feel certificated librarians are very important. And I have 3 granddaughters coming up in the school district, and I would like to see that decision revoked. And the fact that there was no public comment or anything about that decision is disturbing to me. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Marco Bicchieri.
Marco Bicchieri, 752 Robinson Canyon Road. I want to thank you guys for your service, and Ginger, thank you for your email that we had this week. And thanks also to Jennifer Kuntz for a good conversation we had to clarify some misunderstandings I had, and also to clarify some of my positions this week. In fact, the exchange with Ginger and the sit down with Jen, where we had some time to really talk and have a conversation, to me felt great. It was respectful. We didn't agree on everything, but we clarified some things that were going on. In fact, to me, that type of respectful and rich conversation is something that I guess I've just been disappointed that I don't feel like enough people have been involved in, using the case of the librarians specifically, possibly involving other staff, community, starting earlier, but more than anything involving those librarians who are super dedicated, caring professionals who have done what they've done for a long time, and I'm pretty sure are amenable to some of the changes that it feels like that the district is looking for, especially after looking at what the elementary school is doing. I know in the case of Kathy, she has no lack of interest in using electronic technology. She's good at it. She does a lot with it. I don't know if everybody fully appreciates the range of what she also does in her role for the school. But I would just ask once again, I can't ask enough, that you back up in this situation a little bit and pause and involve Kathy and Pat in the kind of imagining of that position, maybe some interested staff and community members. And I think that's simply what we're asking here. I know for a lot of us, this is sort of symptomatic of some of the decision-making processes that we at least feel have been made by the board and central office. I've never been part of it. I've been here for 30 years and I've never had people that have had to make public records requests for very simple things. And I don't think that most of these are at the harassment level. But anyway, just rethink. Thanks for the conversation. I feel like things are moving in the right direction, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Barb Gall.
Good evening. My name is Barb Gall. I live at 3734 River Bottom Road, Ellensburg, Washington. First, if I may just make a suggestion for future meetings. There used to always be some nameplates in front of everybody's faces, and you know who's talking and who each other is. So I would love that. Second, I'm saddened that we have teachers in our school district that do not feel comfortable speaking their minds at a school board meeting, of all places, where our community students, teachers, admin, and school board come together to share and be heard. So the following is a statement from a current Ellensburg School District teacher. These are their words. I am addressing you anonymously tonight through a third party who is willing to share my thoughts. I am choosing to do this because there is a culture of fear spreading within the Ellensburg School District, as increasing numbers of staff have recently had their positions cut and have been reassigned into positions which on paper they may be qualified for, but positions that certainly are not in their current areas of expertise. This has increasingly been the case for teachers over the age of 50. Instead of approaching this from a strengths-based angle and offering additional training for current staff to create the new programs that district admin is envisioning, these positions are simply eliminated, and teachers who have dedicated their careers to this district are being reassigned, or worse, are left feeling devalued and are retiring early as a result. A few years ago, I read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, The Story of Success. Gladwell discusses the number of hours needed to go beyond merely being proficient in a particular field and move toward true mastery level. From computer programmers to musicians to artists to authors, the time needed to reach this mastery level is estimated at 10,000 hours. For teachers, this translates into 13 to 14 years of teacher-student interaction and an endless array of professional development to stay current. Teachers with this many years are the masters. They readily learn from their younger colleagues who join them, but their years of experience teaching and interacting with students is beyond value to our schools and our district. Our one school board member is particularly routinely cites the salaries of our experienced teachers as the reason for the district's budget woes. This makes me think that the district's system of cutting positions and reassigning experienced teachers is designed in hopes that they will leave and take their invaluable experience with them. So I ask you, who suffers when this happens? Our entire community of teachers and learners suffers. These top-down decisions need to end. Let's get back to collaborative decision-making this district was known for under previous administrations.
Thank you.
Mary Gordon, please.
And Leslie, I can keep track of time. Yeah, I can keep track of time. Yep, I've got the time. Thanks, Mary.
You did say Mary Gordon. I did.
Yes,
sorry.
thanks, Mary.
Mary Gordon, 2720 Cove Road. I'm returning to the microphone to ask you to please reinstate the librarians and let our trusted and experienced certified librarians help you develop your new STEAM or STREAM programs. It will be more robust, more cohesive, and a better program coming from a teacher in place who knows and understands their students, their buildings in this school district. This is best for kids. So I repeat, please reinstate our school librarians. In the last month, I have scoured school board meetings from the summer of 22 to present, and I'd also like to address the board about the many disparaging comments made about teachers at the top end of the pay scale. These comments are demeaning, belittling, and not in the spirit of a group of people who should be fighting for the people who are educating our kids. It makes the board sound petty and jealous, and it's embarrassing to watch. Our most experienced and longest standing teachers are the soul of our district. They mentor young teachers. They bring their incredible expertise to discussions and committees. They may also be the very people who are in contentious conversations with the school board and the district administration with contract negotiations and contract issues. But I hope as professionals, you can distinguish between what happens in the classroom and what happens in a contract negotiation. As a community, we can't stand back and watch you harass and belittle the people who are leaders in our district and our most important educational commodity. Our teachers had nothing to do with the state deciding all school employees should be on the same benefit package as the rest of the state employees, and pointing out how much they're costing you, why certainly a budget issue is not the teacher's fault. And according to your presentation last week, it's important to note that the lowest paid director in the central office earns over $95,000. And I'm left wondering if they all have the same experience and advanced degrees as some of our highest paid teachers do. And if one more school board member points out that 84% of our budget is in staff, they are humans and they teach humans. Of course, our biggest cost is people. Lastly, I listened to a podcast yesterday on the very real teacher shortage. You may want to talk down to the teachers who make the most pay, but who will we replace them with? I would imagine word is out that Ellensburg is not a very fun place to work, too much change, too much animosity between the district and the teachers, and a school board that often makes comments meant to shame teachers for making a decent living. The average price for a home in Ellensburg is quickly becoming unreachable for a young teacher starting out. So please think hard about your comments toward teachers who are currently holding your district together. These rude comments do not represent Ellensburg and the community you are elected to represent. Thank you for your time and energy in serving on the school board.
Thank you, Mary.
Michelle Bradshaw.
Michelle Bradshaw, 7301 Hanson Road. I'm reading a letter, or half of a letter that was written by one of our teaching staff. As an educational professional who has been serving middle school students and families for well over 25 years, I can say that I have never felt more denigrated and maligned than I have in the past several weeks. The ongoing commentary from the board, coupled with deeply troubled district decisions, have served not only to fracture trust and fragment morale, but to break the spirit of those who work most closely with our most precious resources, our kids. Teachers are quite comfortable being held to high standards, and we hold our students to the same, working tirelessly to create classrooms full of dignity, respect, equality, discourse, and learning, working endlessly to plan and effectively implement curriculum that helps students to achieve national standards across core subjects. Working early, late, and across weekends and breaks to grade papers, make phone calls, answer emails, conference with families, attend meetings for students with special needs or who otherwise are struggling, learn new and ever-changing electronic platforms to communicate with students and families about progress of all kinds, reflect on practice, make changes, and improve, always improve. To document that what we are doing both in and out of the classroom is worthwhile. And that is just the start of a description of what we do as teaching and learning professionals. We did all this when we were paid a pittance, when we were paid a mere fraction of what we are worth, because it is who we are, it is what we do, day in and day out, with kids who are not always cherubs, with families who are not always able to invest what we hope for. Thankfully, the state of Washington came to understand the importance of adequately funding education, which in no part included amending teachers' salaries to better reflect the rigorous, ever-increasing demands of the profession. For those who had already invested decades of the pittance level while simultaneously putting themselves through graduate school, taking night classes, while also working full-time, raising families, facing many, many years without so much as a COLA, that did translate into significant gains. Gains that were in our design to attract high-quality teachers to the profession, as well as retain them to 5 and 10-year marks so that their expertise may benefit both students and colleagues in learning communities.
Thank you.
Debbie Roden.
Hi, Debbie Rowden, 921 Kittitas Highway. I'm reading the second page of the statement from a current Ellensburg teacher. Now it would seem that we are supposed to feel shame because we have an experienced, well-educated teaching cohort in our district that includes multiple national board certified teachers, a cohort that serves ESD students and families, partners with countless Central Washington University students and faculty to help train up the next generation of educators who serve alongside teachers around the state, liaising with OSPI representatives across a variety of venues, a cohort whose collective expertise benefits our students and in turn our community each and every day. Because when presentations are made about the cost of staffing in our district, we represent half of that slice of pie because the state decided that they wanted medical coverage and costs for teachers to align with other state employees, such as those at Central, so that we no longer need to spend 20% or more of our paychecks to cover ourselves and our families if we could afford it, as we did pre-SEBB program. I, for one, feel no shame about spending nearly 30 years dedicated to a difficult profession that demands the best of me each and every day, a profession that few dare to enter and even fewer dare to stay. I feel no shame about being compensated in measures commensurate with my worth. I am proud to stand with each and every one of my colleagues in the Ellensburg School District, younger, older, and everything in between, knowing that we eat, breathe, and live excellence every day, both in and out of the classroom. Just as we hold ourselves to the highest of standards, I would ask that our district and board leadership hold themselves to the highest of standards. And just as teachers are expected to deal with students and families with dignity and respect, I would ask that our district and board leadership reference our district's teaching professionals with that same dignity and respect. Our work, our compensation ought no longer serve as fodder to distract from the larger issues at hand, as the bright red ball in a shell game that so easily grabs the public's attention that it fails to notice the rest of what is being covered over and shifted around while its attention is diverted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa Wolford.
Hi, Melissa Wolford, 2308 North Ellington Street, 2008 graduate of Ellensburg High School. Thank you to the board. I really appreciate and have a lot of respect for everything that you guys do. School districts continue to get more and more complex, and there's a lot of rules and red tape and hoops that you have to jump through. And I really appreciate all of that work, as all of the educators here also have to deal with. In listening to the last few meetings, it's obvious we have a shortfall in our budget, but when talking about things like increasing student enrollment, preparing students for life after high school, retaining staff and keeping students on track to graduate, we must be in dire straits to be cutting secondary librarians. They are invaluable. And I know you've heard strong points from educators, students, and community members, so I'm not going to badger you with them, but I think there are a lot of wonderful points to take into play. And with class sizes as high as 42 students for one teacher, there is no way we can ask our educators to connect with each one of those students. And the way that librarians fill that gap and connect to those students is immeasurable. And I hope that you'll take that into consideration. And I know we would all love a little bit more clarity. And I did see on the agenda, I think you're planning to do that on how we got to this decision, why this is what we chose to cut. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh Welch.
Hello, my name is Josh Welsh. I live at 903 East Spokane. I am, the father of 3 children in the district. I've lived in Ellensburg for 8 years and have thus far always voted to support Ellensburg schools. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight, and I want to thank you for serving the community. I'm here tonight to ask you to reconsider the decision to cut the certified library positions and the dedicated library resources in Ellensburg schools. We saw a presentation at the last meeting showcasing all the books that are available in the classrooms. My kids have been in these classrooms. I know that there are great resources for books in the classrooms, and this is really great. But it doesn't replace the experience that a student has when they go to the library. And they ask help learning how to do research, how to research a topic. Librarians don't tell students the answers to questions. They teach students how to ask questions that will lead to meaningful answers. We've also seen information about the interesting technology resources that students have in our schools, the coding opportunities, video production tools, and more. My kids and I were watching the meeting last week, and they were really excited about some of these tools, and they thought they were really cool. These are great opportunities that can benefit students and their employment prospects and their different ways of thinking. But it's really not clear what students will be able to create with these tools without fundamental skills related to information literacy that for many students are either begin in the library or are strengthened in the library. What use is, a green screen for creating a sort of a podcast, or I guess it would be like a video newscast, if students aren't able to research multiple aspects or perspectives of a current event. Similarly, I worked for years as a technical writer, sort of in the next cube from computer programmers and coders. And they had a way of explaining the limitations of code itself. They said, if you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So please make sure that our students can become informationally literate citizens. I understand that these cuts are being made in response to budgetary pressures. I just ask that you look for other solutions to that problem. There must be a way to navigate this challenge without gutting the libraries in our schools. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh.
I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Tim Sorey. I live on 805 East Tacoma Avenue. I yield my time so that you may very carefully listen to the remaining teachers and librarians who have a lot more to say from their perspective. And I graciously ask you to step up and do your part. Librarians make it all happen. So let's make this happen.
Thank you, Tim.
Gloria. I'm sorry, I couldn't read your handwriting.
Hi, I'm Gloria Bugney. I live at 361 Cedar Cove Road. And I am also reading another letter that was written by an anonymous teacher, and it has to do with salary. And I brought some papers in, and it looks like I also included one of my notes papers. Yeah. Okay, so to the Ellensburg School Board and Superintendent, at the request of a board member during the last meeting, tonight I offer you a comparison of salaries from all the districts in the CWAC Athletic Conference. These are districts in our region, which are roughly our size. They are our peer districts. I have compared the salary schedules at 4 different points, which you'll see on the left-hand side of the sheet. A beginning teacher with a BA, a teacher at 8 years with a BA plus 90 additional credits, a teacher at 16 years with a master's plus 90 additional credits, and a teacher at the top of each district's salary schedule. I have highlighted in green each time the other district's salaries are higher than Ellensburg's. And as you can easily see, there is quite a lot of green on the sheet, indicating that Ellensburg's salaries continue to be lower than our peer districts in the region. Prosser is one of the districts which typically falls below Ellensburg in terms of salary. However, Prosser has structured their salary schedule so that their teachers reach the top in just 12 years, probably in an effort to increase their teacher retention. In Ellensburg, it takes 25 years to reach top pay, and that top pay is approximately $1,000 over what Prosser teachers earn in 12 years. So Prosser may pay slightly less at top pay, but their teachers reach that pay much sooner and therefore have more years at that level. I sincerely hope the board will look carefully at these numbers and consider this before making any additional comments about how overpaid the teachers in this district are. Signed by an anonymous teacher. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Joy Lassard.
Joy Lassard, 815 East 5th Avenue, Ellensburg. I spoke last week and my time ran out. And all good speakers know that if you make a complaint, you must offer a suggestion. So I will. I urge you to please review your decision and direct funds differently so our educational system in the Ellensburg School District does not regress in any way. The promise you made that these positions would return if the money returned to the budget is hollow promise at best. It does not serve our community as it should currently. Please listen to those who directly work with students. You have the opportunity to make this right. We all deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.
Good evening, Kevin Dwight, 402 South Courts Mountain Drive. I stand before you today simply to ask, I wonder if we don't maybe think a little bit about vulnerability. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's okay to say that we need to come together as a community and find a way to move past this, to create unity among the community, the staff, the students, all of the families in this community. I think we can do this. I really do. I'm confident, in fact. I would ask you to simply consider that maybe board policy 6022 doesn't require a perfect 5% fund balance, and that maybe we dip into that just a little bit to get past a difficult time, to keep powerful leaders, powerful teachers, icons in the community, what you're hearing all about. Let's problem solve together. Teachers are here to listen. Let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Maureen Rust.
Hi, Maureen Rust, 808 East Washington Avenue here in Ellensburg. First, I didn't do this last time I spoke, and I should have. I want to thank you all for your service to our school district and to our families and students. Since the residents and employees of the district learned of the elimination of our school library programs, either being eliminated or at the very best interrupted, it has become obvious there's great concern about this decision. We can all agree our primary concern is for the good of our students, and that their experience in our school system is that they have been provided resources and recognition in an equitable way so that they can reach their full potential. This is not a conflict between technology training and literacy and critical thinking skills. Our objective is to educate our students to be well-rounded, having enjoyed a holistic education. I propose we move forward, working together to find a more fruitful way to move our library programs forward, and that our precious and valuable current teacher librarians are reinstated and a significant part of that process, and that the voices of your constituents are heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen.
Layla Breckman.
Layla Brecken, 90 Blue Sky Lane. I'm a senior at EHS. I know the decisions made for the years to come will not affect me, but they will affect others below me. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the negative results that removing librarians will have on countless children in the coming years. I'm not an outspoken person. In fact, I prefer to observe and absorb, but I'm here because of my own connections with librarians. As a young child, I read above my grade level, and if I did not have a library or librarians, I would be forced to read the in-class materials, which would make me bored. I know that I'm more the exception, but even for those kids that read at or below the grade level, having the resources and the space to go and not feel pressured or judged is huge. Librarians are a neutral connection who can encourage kids to become lifelong learners and can help create a drive for knowledge. So I ask, what is the benefit of removing librarians? It will only push children away from reading and knowledge, as well as make the rest of their educational career a chore. We have limited resources in Kittitas County for children to explore and benefit from,
So removing another exploratory aspect from their schools can only cause harm. If the benefit of removing librarians is the financial gain, shouldn't we review other unnecessary expenditures? I was a high school student before COVID, and I remember when we primarily used Google Classroom instead of Schoology. It was way easier to navigate, more accessible, and free in comparison to Schoology, which has created much more hassle for both students and teachers. I know that cutting Schoology isn't going to make up for however much the librarians cost, but we can reevaluate where our money is going and cut ends where it makes more sense. I have a bookmark that my elementary librarian gave me when I graduated from 5th grade with a personalized note on the back. Now I'm about to graduate from high school and I still have that bookmark and cherish what she wrote for me. Those are the types of connections we will be losing if we cut librarians from all schools. Those kind of personalized connections that help you feel like you can succeed at life. And to finish up, I would like to ask you guys to please come into the schools, meet with students and teachers, and go to the libraries. Meet with the kids that line up outside of the library at the high school, waiting for the doors to open so they can go into their safe space. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the last name on my list.
And we are right at 7:01. So I think we have successfully gotten through public comment. So thank you all. All right, so the way this is going to work, and I'm going to read a policy for the board, policy 1410 about executive and closed sessions. So closed session private meetings. The Open Public Meetings Act does not apply to certain board activities, and public notice is not required prior to holding a closed session for any of the following purposes: collective bargaining sessions with employee organizations or professional negotiations with an employee, including contract negotiations, grievance meetings, and discussions relating to the interpretation or application of a labor agreement, or that portion of a meeting in which the board is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken during the course of collective bargaining, professional negotiations, or grievance or mediation proceedings, or reviewing the proposals made in the negotiations or proceedings while in progress.
And just a clarification, we did start negotiations with EEA, our teachers union, on Friday.
Okay. And so just for clarification, we are going into the closed session for labor negotiations.
Yes, and when I said Friday, I meant last Friday. So it's in progress.
All right, perfect. All right, so we are going to, yes, we are going to adjourn and we will return at 8 o'clock. We have an hour slated for this closed session. So thank you.
Oh. I can't, I got too many things going. I'm sorry. This list, which says board study session. No, I didn't blatantly ignore it. You came up during a meeting in session and signed the motion.
You realize that. No, you're
You're back on so I can pull up the agenda.
Wow. Well, I offered.
Right. Okay. All right, Leslie, everybody's back on. We are just, board's getting all their computers back up. They have all went to sleep and I've lost my Wi-Fi connection. All right, so as we're pulling up, as everybody else is pulling up the agenda, it looks like where we left off was administration 3C. And so we will be moving into overview, staffing structure, and overview of budget reduction summary document. So Ginger.
Leslie, could you bring up the staffing structure one? We're going to do that one first. If you could put that on the screen, please, and let's make sure that Zoom folks can see it. We can't see it. We don't have it up. Sorry.
Board, we had some questions about this chart before. Jonathan was asking to add some information. So I went ahead and added the FTE for each category. I'm not going to go over the whole chart because we went over it last time. So I just added the FTE for each category. And then at the bottom, you will see I added some information about a prototypical model. And so apportionment is based on prototypical model, and that's our basic education funding. It's not all our staff out of there. It's just part of our staff that's funded out of basic education. The other part of our staff is funded out of grants, categorical funding. So on this, you will see that our prototypical model for certificated teachers, ESAs, they fund 155.171 FTE. We have 160.74 FTE in that area. So for a difference of 5.569. So certificate administrators, they fund 11.598 FTE. And we have actually 14.8 being funded out of basic education, which is the 3.2 difference. Classified staff, they fund 41.167 out of basic education funding, and we actually have 53.12 FTEs for a difference of 11.95. And then classified administrators, they fund 8.104. We actually have 8.68 for a difference of 0.576. So I just wanted to go over that with you guys. This is for basic education in our apportionment that we get from OSPI. Are there any questions?
Thank you for getting the information because I'm the one who requested that. So thank you for those clarifications because those numbers are important for a variety of reasons. One, when we're talking prototypical model, this is something that we've been advocating to Olympia that this is an outdated model. It harms Ellensburg students if we only staff at that model. So can you remind me, for elementary, are we paid does the state fund this for one full nurse at all three of our elementaries?
No, they don't at this time.
Not even one.
Not even one.
And so, but we have 3 nurses.
At each, yeah, we actually
have
have
one
5
nurse. We have-
for the whole district, yes, but we have a nurse at each building.
And so those are some of the things that when we take to Olympia, especially in light of what we've seen nurses have to go through for 3 school years disrupted by COVID, already on top of of what they have to do day to day. We take that to Olympia and we say, this is not equitable. We need this to be fixed. We did that House bill, or I guess now it's not just a House bill that passed for that. We do see some relief in that for our nurses, but am I correct in saying it's not for 3 years from now? They're phasing it in for 3 years.
Correct.
And then will we then, because Ellensburg has decided that we should have a nurse at every single school. Will we then be paid, will that be fully funded at the end of 3 years? Or maybe not sure. Yeah.
Better.
We're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better. It's not quite there. I don't remember the numbers as far as, I almost want to say it's 600 students, but I don't remember what that is. I'd have to, yeah, but it's much better. So that's good. You also have to follow requirements and compliance. So it's not just money that's given to us without us following the compliance, and they're coming out with that still, so.
So then can you remind me, like at Ellensburg, and we want nurses in our schools, like we want people to be there to support those needs. If the state is not funding us for that, where is that bucket of money going to fund these salaries, these FTE?
Right, and I was just going to say that, as you can see that there's a difference in that. I misspelled the word there. Sorry about that. There's the difference, and that difference is going to come out of our levy, is where we're going to be funding it. And even in the category go with our grants, and if we're over, we have more staff than what grants are going to fund to, and so that's going to come out of our levy also.
I'm asking these questions a lot too, to get you guys to ask questions too, if you want, because this was very confusing to me when I first sat down and joined the board, that when the legislature passes things, says we appreciate nurses and we think nurses should be everywhere. And I'm like, great, we're going to get funding for that. We actually don't get that. And then there's like these little bits that come in there. And then I'm like, let's take that money from, someone tonight said Schoology. Let's take the money from Schoology and let's pay this XYZ. Can we take money from those different buckets and move them around like that?
It depends on what
it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah,
It's more
sometimes,
complex.
yeah. Because with the grants and stuff, you have to be following the grant requirements. So depending on what they're teaching, what they're servicing, it's that kind of thing. And transportation and food service has to be spent on transportation. You can't take funding from transportation or food services.
Then the other thing that I reported on last week that I was hoping for clarification on, because it does tie into the protypical, is that IPD was passed for K-12 staff at 5.5%. But our other educators at Central, it's 3.25%. Now, is the state going to fully fund the 5.5% for certificated teachers at 160.74?
No, they funded at 155 point.
So only to the prototypical model.
Correct.
I'm wondering, how is this different as far as the actual staff versus the apportionment? This is not new for Ellensburg, is it? I mean, prior to COVID, were we still over?
Correct. Yes.
So we've always had more staff than.
I don't know if we always have, but in the last few
recent
years,
history. And has it always been about, historically, we're not way over this year as opposed to prior years?
I would have to look back to prior years. I think we're somewhere right in this range for the last few years.
Okay.
I mean, maybe the last 5, but I would have to look back. And I can do that if you'd like me to.
Thank you.
To kind of piggyback off of what Madeline said on the
over versus the prototypical. Do we have over because trying to keep down on class sizes? Do we have, why is the reasoning we have over the prototypical?
Well, so for example, for certificated staff, that includes counselors. And when you go back to the prototypical model, I could try to pull it up again. I've got it for counselors, but I know like for nurses in elementary of this one memorized, you need about a little over 5,000 students to fund one full-time nurse. And it's kind of similar types of numbers like for counselors and other certificated staff. And so I believe the prototypical model is broken, and I was disappointed. They had a committee that was going to try to fix the prototypical model. They talked about it, and then they never really followed through with anything. The prototypical model is old, and it needs to be revised to our current needs. The needs of our students have changed, and we need to be able to keep up with that.
Can I ask a follow-up? You talked earlier about temporary positions that were paid by ESSER. Are these included in these numbers? They are not. So these are in addition to. Do we know how many exactly? How many positions are funded by ESSER?
We can come to you with that. That's a really good question. We can come back so that we could just kind of estimate, but it would be better for us to come back with the list so you have accurate information.
I would say probably 10 to 15.
In addition to what's the, okay.
And that's a grant funded.
Yeah.
So this is not grant funded. So
Okay.
that's why they're not included.
And so are there additional staff besides the ESSER staff that are grant funded that are not included in this?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. From other grants?
Yes. Our special education teachers and our staff are funded by a state grant and levy.
Okay.
And I think we shared this earlier too, but like some of the positions right now, especially for next year that are going to be funded with ESSER, and I've had that as part of the slide that I've shared with you guys at several board meetings, include our deans, include our early learning coordinator, our 2 mental health specialists for next year, our 2 family liaisons. And so there's several that are being funded with ESSER. I appreciate you asking that question because I think it would be helpful to have an actual list of just staff members that are being funded by ESSER. So we'll bring that to you guys on either on the 15th or the 20th.
Board, any other questions? I will have questions, I think, for the next board meeting that I'm going to pass along. I think this is really helpful information. I recognize I am not a good politician. I'm way too direct. I also think I am not good at telling everybody what they want to hear. But I do think it's important for our I do think I represent our taxpayers, and I think they need transparency. And so I think we need to keep diving into this. I do regret that teachers think that this was an attack against them because we're looking at gender, we're looking at your salary, we're looking at it really critically, like why are you paid what you paid? So I'm happy to say that on record. And I hope you don't take offense by that.
No.
But I think that's our role as a board.
Yep.
We have to make sure this district doesn't go belly up. And so we're going to ask some hard questions, or at least I'm going to. So that's my end of my comment.
Okay. So to the next one. Do you want me to go out to the next one, the budget reductions presentation? All right. And let me see if I can do it from the beginning here without it. There we go. All right. So what are the reasons that we need to look at budget reductions? As you know, we've had a drop in enrollment. And I'm going to show you an actual enrollment kind of year by year. We take enrollment once a month at the beginning of the month. And there's 2 ways of doing enrollment, but I'm going to go through that with you later because you probably have some questions. We still down by about 60 FTE or students, and there's a difference between headcount and FTE, so I'm going to explain that. We receive about $8,800 per student from the state, and enrollment is a major driver of funding for Ellensburg. Another factor that affects our budget, factors related to McCleary. I've shared this with you guys several times. I think it's unfortunate the state no longer supports us with being able to have that staff mix factor and receiving more, because we do have more experienced teachers. And I believe that that is an absolute benefit for our district. Unfortunately, the state, instead of supporting that, it chooses to give us a flat rate instead of about $67,000. The levy lid came out of post McCleary as well at $150 per thousand. I'm going to show you a graph. I showed it to you when we went out for the levy, but I'm going to show it to you again. Again, a thank you to our taxpayers for passing the levy, because instead of getting $150 per thousand, and actually there's one year we even receive a little less than that, we're going to get the $250 per thousand. And as you know, we're going to start with these new $250 per thousand starting in January of 2023. Kim just went over, we're over that prototypical model in FTE, and she just went over that information. We've talked about increased salaries across the board for folks. And during those first 2 years, 2018, 19, 20, and we did that to be able to hire and retain qualified staff. We had increased costs across the board because of the statewide insurance system. It wasn't like any specific group. It was across the board that we had those increases from going to the statewide insurance. We have had significant increased costs for special education programming, and Kelly shared with you part of it is because of the contracted services. We have outside services that are willing to pay a lot more for people like our speech and language pathologists, as opposed to what we're able to offer for a full-time. Although we're excited, we do have a couple of candidates for that. So we're hoping that we'll be able to hire them and start trimming down and cutting down on those contracted services that are outside of our district. And we do have increased monies over the years to CW to increase numbers of students doing Running Start program. And I'll kind of explain why that is when we go over the FTE. So what I'm going to ask for you guys to do, if you would, just because I want to try to get through this at a pretty good pace so that we leave a lot of time for questions. As you have questions, please write them down. And then I can circle back and go through the slides, because a question you might ask might be answered at the next slide. And what do we mean when we say enrollment is an important driver? Money from the state is given to us in the form of what's called FTE, and enrollment counts. So at the beginning of every month, they do counts, and Matt Siskey is amazing in doing all the reporting that goes with this. He has to look at FTE and head count on the first full day of classes each month. So FTE is based off of student seat time or instructional time. And one FTE roughly means that you have one full-time student who has a full schedule. And the way the state looks at it is they look at student schedules. And if they've got a full schedule, then they count as a full-time student. That's a rough way of saying it, because they look at other things too, and it's a little more complex. And if we want Matt to do a presentation around enrollment, as you were saying, Jason, to dig deeper, we could certainly do that. Head count is a little bit different. It's recorded, and a student has to attend a school for about 50% of their day to count for a head count. So if you look across the years, September of 2018, our ESD FTE enrollment was at 3,200, a little over that. September of 2019, our enrollment FTE wise was 3,216. And then that was the year in March 13th where we shut down for COVID and everybody went virtual. Now, when we talk about that 200 student down, you can see it right there, that between and from September 2019, and then you look at September of 2020, the FTE went from 32 to 2,989. And that is when I talk about that, at the beginning of the 2020 school year, that's what I'm talking about. And you can see it in the actual numbers I had Matt run the reports and I took them straight from the report. September 2021, we start to climb back up again, which is good. And we talked about that enrollment is starting to go up. And our most recent one, which is the beginning of March, and he's still processing April. So we'll probably be able to bring that to you at the April 20th meeting. We're now sitting at about 3,150. So as I've stated, we were down about 50 or 60 FTE or students. And I think on the next slide, let me see. So, example, a running start student. So head count can be a little bit different than FTE because 2 half-time running start students could 50-50 could count as 1 FTE. Those numbers are close, but they're not exact. And again, I can have Matt talk more about that. He was showing me some of his charts on that. This is just the levy one. You guys have seen this one before, but it shows that in 2020, 2021, and this year, the blue is the EP&O levy, where we were collecting 1.47 in 2020, 1.4 in 2021, 1.32 in 2022, and then starting, you can see that bump in January of 2023. So that chart is just kind of nice to go back to because it shows, and that shows our overall debt services. This is the board priorities, budget board priorities. The board put this in place, I think it was right 2019, because that's when we were looking at and already started talking about the fact that we knew that we were going to have some reductions that needed to be made. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. I went back and looked at a PowerPoint that I did for administrators, and it's pretty close to what we're talking about right now. So the board adopted this formally in a board meeting. And as you can see in the center, the board said at the time that we really wanted to make our core 4 math, science, language arts, social studies, looking at special education, health, nutrition. Those were the core that the board said was really to guide decisions around budget. And when we had that conversation around core 4, we were specifically talking about, especially in classrooms, right? Because that's where most instructional time happened in classrooms. And that was what I heard in that conversation around budget priorities. Then we said, if we needed to reduce, we look at co-curricular, and then certainly some of the things around on the outside. Some of the ways to reduce the budget that we put on there is certainly more revenue, which is, thank goodness, we are getting from the levy. Temporary suspension of programs. And as you remember, as we started to go into the need for reductions, we did do some temporary suspensions of things. And we actually looked at, are there different ways on these 2 outer circles that we can trim a little bit to be able to reduce. And then certainly finding efficiencies. Finding efficiencies is what we did this time as much as we could through attrition to find ways to reduce the budget with minimizing the number of employees that would be without a job completely. And that's what finding efficiencies. That's how I look at that. One way, there's multiple ways, right? We've also looked at, and you'll see, I'll go through that when we go through the budget sheet. There's other ways also to reduce and to minimize, and I'll show you what we did with that as well. So when we went through all of those reductions, and I've shared these through with you before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But again, we wanted to minimize permanent lost jobs by students. We looked at reducing budget equitably across most departments. We can't make cuts like the nutrition and transportation because they're funded differently than our general fund. And certainly keeping reductions from significantly impacting students' learning in classrooms, like having large increases in class sizes. So there's all these words that we're using. Attrition, and that's where staff members are reassigned to open positions that are different than the ones they currently have. Open positions, staff openings that have been vacated due to employees who have resigned or retired. And currently, ESD has several elementary openings and no secondary openings. Okay, that's important. Reorganization is another word that we've used and that you're going to see in here. And that's where we're changing positions to new ones, not filling old ones, so that overall salaries and costs within a department decrease. And I'll share some examples of that in the last couple of slides. When we looked at the prototypical model and we looked at staffing in general, elementary staffing did not demonstrate a need to decrease the number of elementary teachers. At secondary level, we did demonstrate the ability to move some secondary teachers as far as how many FTE they were over, especially with the prototypical model. So attrition, what is it? Again, the high school and middle school librarians will be moved into middle school classrooms. That's the plan that we have right now, which causes a shift of middle school teachers who have elementary certification to move to the elementary school where the open positions exist. Not all teachers have elementary certification, so it's important to think about how the reassignment of teachers overall result in the movement of secondary teachers into the open elementary positions. And as I kind of shared with you guys in the study session, we had to really look at what the sixth grade middle school teachers who had what kind of certification, and knowing that we needed to be able to make some movement at the high school, we had to take that into consideration. So here's an example. Middle school, Morgan Middle School librarian moves to an 8th grade English class, which is my understanding is that's what's happening at this point, which causes a Morgan Middle School English teacher who's elementary certified to move to an elementary open position. And then here's another example. An EHS math teacher moves to teach middle school math, which causes a middle school math teacher who's elementary certified to move into an open elementary position. Why did we come out with those decisions or put those out there right now? Well, it also has to do with the fact that we're moving from 3 to 4 schools, and we're about ready to have multiple openings in elementary, especially at Ida Nason. And we felt like it was really important, in fairness to teachers, that the middle school elementary certified folks who were being, involuntary transferred or reassigned, they needed to be able to have the same opportunity as any other elementary teacher who was needing to be involuntary transferred, because we may no longer need 4 sections of 4th grade at Valley View. When we make the shift to 4 schools, we might only need 3. And so we have a group of teachers that will also are going to be shifting to different schools. And we felt like it was only fair that middle school folks who were being involuntary transferred to elementary would have the same opportunity. And those shifts are happening right now. I'm thankful that we were able to do that. And now our middle school teachers who are being involuntary transfers have the same opportunity for those, as opposed to if we were weighted, those opportunities would be gone. And I didn't think that would be fair to those middle school teachers who were being involuntary transferred to elementary. An involuntary transfer means that we're asking people and saying that we're going to reassign you, as opposed to somebody who says, I want to go here. And we have used attrition multiple times over the past few years to make reductions as necessary with the budget. So here's some other factors to consider. A systemic reduction in force. We are not doing this, but I want to use this as an example. This occurs when several employees receive notification that their jobs will be eliminated and that they will no longer have employment with ESD. If we were needing to do that and go through this process, then staff, community members, parents, and teachers would be asked for their general feedback before issuing these notifications. Again, in the past, when we've done involuntary transfers, we have talked with, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, we've met with administrators, we've met with district staff, and we've had to look at people's certifications and able to move people to keep overall and to minimize people from losing their jobs. Because our levy passed, ESD does not have to implement a systemic reduction in force for this year. If the levy wouldn't have passed, we may have been looking at that. We may have to let a few employees go, but we're trying not to through the reduction through attrition. In order to implement effective reductions to attrition, decisions need to be made, again, considering multiple factors, including specific certifications of various employees. This process, again, that we use is consistent with the process that we've used in previous years. We also, for this decision, for these reductions, had multiple meetings with building level and district level administrators. Some of the dates of the meetings, I put those down on this PowerPoint, were with principals as a team, individual principals, with our teaching and learning staff, who are district directors around teaching and learning and special education. And again, we had multiple conversations. And as a result of these discussions, we also made several different changes to the overall reductions that would be made. So we listened to that feedback. And this doesn't at all even include all of the different meetings that Kim and Kelly and I had. As we received that feedback, we'd go and try to make some shifts. We'd bring it back to these different teams. We'd go back, and it went back and forth to finally land on what we have. So this again is what we have. It's posted on our website, overall percentages. And then here are and again, these are approximate amounts of the reductions from every level. And you can see for district office where it says reorganization, that's why I put that term earlier. It's shifting people around so that the overall cost of salaries go down. And you can see we had some reductions there. Where it says carryover, I want to explain that. Every year, building principals get a certain amount for their building budget. If they don't use it all, then that's called carryover. And sometimes principals, well, all schools, well, then it's like a savings account for the school. They start to build that up. And I think at the high school, for example, that's been an important way for departments to be able to do some planning for what they might want to plan to use in the future. And they work that out with their principal. We did have a fairly significant amount in the carryovers. And so we went back and forth with principals and landed on something that we thought was fair around carryover to help with that reduction. So that's what that is. And you can see classified staff is a little bit different. We are still waiting to see what kind of resignations or retirements that we might have with classified staff. Their cycle tends to be a little bit different. Oftentimes we'll see those come in later in the year as opposed to teachers, for example, because most districts will start posting for teaching jobs now, like in April and May, whereas some classified staff openings could happen pretty much year round. And oftentimes classified staff, and Kim, tell me if this is true or not, but what I've heard you say before is oftentimes classified staff, the hiring happens a lot of times in August for that. So their cycle is a little bit different. So we're kind of waiting on that right now to see what kind of resignations and retirements come in. We know we're going to have to do it, but we're hoping with classified staff to be able to reassign folks and be able to move people around so that, again, we can minimize the number of staff members that would be without a job altogether. So that's the end of this presentation, and would love to answer. And if I'm not able to respond to a question, I will write it down and I can bring it to you. I can give it to you in writing as well as give you the response in our meeting on the 20th or the 15th.
I wrote down 3 notes. Pretty much 2 of them have to do with the running start. You mentioned that the district pays for running start. So if a student isn't at least 50%, which is what qualifies to be an FTE. So
wait, hold on just a second. Yeah, I'm going to go back to it. It counts. So if a student, let's say a student that's homeschooled comes and takes a PE, we still get FTE for that, but they have to be there 50% to count in your head count. and the head count is different than FTE. And so FTE is like equal to the actual amount of time in the schedule that you spend in the school. But to count for the head count, you have to be there 50% of the time. So they're a little bit different calculations. I know. But what we get funded on is FTE. So that's the important number to pay attention to.
So we're down about 60 full-time enrollment students right now. If we had those 60 FTE, would that get us to the numbers of the staffing on your presentation, Kim, where the prototypical model, we have staffing over the prototypical model to those 60 FTE help us get back to matching what we currently staff?
It would get us closer, but I can't tell you what that was for sure.
Well, just that in my last teaching learning report, I pulled, it's the document from WEA actually about the prototypical model, and it's only concerning counselors and school nurses. So like in 21-22, the number for counselors that you'd have to have at elementary for every 811 students, you get one counselor. So 60 students wouldn't get us to one counselor. Is that what you meant? Yeah.
And 60 more FTE kind of equates to about $530,000. So
Definitely help. We need to go back to the 3,200 for sure.
So just to follow up on the running start. How much is this can come up in the budget or whatever, the meeting that coming up, how much are we losing that goes to running start?
I think it's up around 900,000 to $1 million. It's up around 900,000 to $1 million that goes to running start.
I had some notes too. I was wondering, so we have the FTE, the historical up. I'm wondering what we actually had budgeted for 2021, 2022.
For the 21-22 budget, we budgeted 3,000 because that's where we ended last year was 3,000. And with the pandemic, we just didn't know where we were going to come into. So we wanted to be very conservative. You don't want to over budget enrollment.
So that extra 150, what does that equate to dollar wise? Do we have a rough kind of estimate?
Yeah, it's about 1.5. It's right in there, 1.3 to 1.5 million dollars.
And how would you project for, since this is kind of a more normal year, what would you be projecting for? What do you base it on for next year?
That's where it's really hard with the pandemic. We don't know what's going to happen next year. We don't know where this if it's going to continue or we're going to have another and we'll lose enrollment again. So we have to look at that in the budgeting process to see where we want to.
Kim, isn't it true too that because of the pandemic and the effects of that these last couple of years, that you would have to almost go back to 2018-19 because that was kind of our last, what you might say normal year, which we were at 3,200 at that point.
Correct.
And then you mentioned temporary suspensions. I don't know what were included in those suspensions. Can you give us kind of an example of what those were?
I think that was like looking at programming where we said that maybe we were going to relook at it or just not do it for this year. I know in the past, for example, with like 5th grade camp, there was a time where and it didn't, not when I was here, but before they had used suspensions, which is why we put it on there. And they said, well, because of budget restrictions, we're not going to be able to do that this year. So that would be an example of the suspension of programming.
And is there anything that's currently suspended?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. And I don't know if this is posted, but do we have an average class size by school? So a high school versus middle school versus the elementaries, what the average class size is?
What I can share with you guys, and I can send that to you, is a spreadsheet that has all of the class sizes for all of our schools, our current class sizes. So I'll share that with you guys.
And then my last one was, I'm wondering how many involuntary transfers we're looking at for the upcoming year. Mhm.
We'll get it for you. We could sit there and try to count it, but we weren't ready for that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And is this the normal kind of, is it this time during the year when you get retirement notices or we're moving out of state, that kind of stuff? Is this within that normal time frame?
Yeah, we put out a letter to certificated staff. I want to say it's the beginning of February, or maybe towards the end of January, maybe it's beginning of January. It's due February 15th. It's a letter asking if they are going to be returning, or are they going to be retiring or resigning? And if they let us know early, they do get an incentive amount of money they get $500 to let us know early so that we can start planning for that.
Thank you.
I think building off what their questions were, looking back at that FTE in 2019, even the beginning of 2019, the year of COVID, we were at 3,216. Have our staffing levels changed from 2019 to today? Like, do we have the same or approximately the same amount of teaching staff that we did in 2019 that we do today?
I believe that we've gone down. I want to say we were at 214 FTE at one point for teachers. And now we're at 206. So, but I don't know where that year is, but we were up in there.
Okay. Just because we saw such an enrollment drop. Like we're serving less students, and it's always hard to look at students as FTE or a dollar amount because they're students. These are kids. But looking at that slide too, enrollment is the major fund driver of public schools. And it just reminded me, everyone's starting to announce their enrollment drops. In Seattle went on record this week of announcing their enrollment drops, and that their gap caused by enrollment gaps is greater than $28 million. So they're looking at staffing adjustments is how they put it. And we're starting to see districts starting to announce more and more where they're coming out in this, which we were sort of hoping the legislature would help more than they did. But it's hard when we're looking at this as FTE because these are children, right? And so we want to serve the children, we want to serve the community, and we want the community to feel comfortable and to feel proud to send their children here. So we have a drop of 60 students who are like, well, why do they no longer feel that ESD is a viable resource for them? What is happening? And that's an always interesting question on my mind. I'm trying to look at all my notes, which I scribbled and I should have done a better job of. Slide 5, the budget circles, the famous bullseye, because we do not have a graphic designer on the board. This conversation did start in 2019 really quickly because I know it was really hard to hear in public comment from people that were saying, well, it's disingenuous or it's demeaning or it's harassing to bring up salaries, but that is our job. We need to keep the district whole and we need to know what's going on. These are facts, and I'm quite proud that I learned to look for facts and use facts in my reasoning for my high school and college education. And so it's not meant to be demeaning. These are things that you can look up on the website, but they are facts and pertinent to the conversation. Starting in 2019, we did have that bump in McCleary funding, that large amount of money that all of a sudden was funneled into public school, which was great. But that was also the year that we just about had a strike and didn't have a first day of school. So there are lots of hurt feelings from that. And the board was struggling with that at the time. I was on the board with that. And we did publicly say, this is going to have rolling budget concerns, because something that the board weighs is that it would not be fair to staff in our schools to have one group receive a raise, and then everyone else just to not get anything, to not feel valued, and to not have a raise. So we knew there'd be rolling repercussions from that would affect our budget and that would put budget pressures on. And so from 2019, we've been developing that and talking, I feel like, at every single meeting about the budget pressures. And when COVID came in, as everything is quickly moving, what were the budget pressures? Where can we resource? How can we get support students and staff in these ridiculously insane, difficult times? And so now we're sitting here where we have to be upfront and say, the budget is what it is. We are a school, we deal with people, and we should do so in an upfront, factual way. And so, yeah, I am going to continue to say that it is more than 80% of our funding. And we have to look at this, and we have to take it into consideration, and we have to look at the 60 children that we are down who, for whatever reason, are existing in our communities. They're here in Ellensburg right now, but they have chosen a different education path than ESD. And so I think we need to consider that, the why. What did you? And so I did want to go on record with this about librarians, things that the public has asked. Where does the board stand on this? So I'm going to try to put my thought process into this, but I do want to make clear, this isn't purview of the board to micromanage the district or to micromanage staff. Something WASDA has trained into us since once you join the board, so you have that to look forward to, that we are here to do the direction. I like to say we're in the crow's nest of the ship and we set the direction, and then the superintendent says the big cool pirate wheel that you get to do, and we say which direction we're going to go to. If the board has trouble with staffing and we're confused by that, or we don't agree with the direction of the district, then we can handle that in multiple ways that the board is prepared for, whether that's in a superintendent evaluation or ongoing feedback to the superintendent, but certainly not a vote to micromanage staff, and it would hamper the direction of the district. So when I was informed or asked about my feelings of secondary librarians would be moved, we'd be potentially moving secondary librarians, it was an emotional gut punch. It was a hit that washed over me. And I just kind of sat there slack-jawed because I'm a former high school teacher that taught in school for 5 years that did not have a library. It's not that we didn't have a librarian. We didn't have a library. We didn't have space to go anywhere. I'm a kid from North Dakota in 1990, where my refuge was the library and the music room, and it allowed me to dream and find a way out of North Dakota and from being a wheat farmer. The library is the safe spot. I agree with everything that people are saying. It's wonderful, it's valid. Amazing things can happen there. But then after the emotional gut punch hit me, then I had to do my job, which was as a school board member, a former high school teacher, a parent with 3 kids moving into secondary at ESD. And my job is to review, ask questions, reflect, and not wallow in emotion. And that was hard because then I had to sit there and review and ask questions. And I want to thank you for answering all my questions. And some of those questions were, are the libraries going to be shut off from our students? Will students no longer have those safe space to go in there? Are books going to be locked up on the shelves? Are we not going to have the resources for teachers to go in there with their classrooms? And you guys shared that, no, that was not true. Are these teacher librarians, right? Are these people, these humans, are they going to lose their job when everything is so volatile and uncertain? And the answer was no, they are not going to lose their jobs. Then I had to ask, can they do anything else? They've been librarians for a long time. Are they certified in anything else? Can they serve students? And he said, yes, no, they are actually, they are certified and they started out as teachers. So yes. Are they going to be moving into classrooms? Yes. Then I had to review that and say, okay, so we have wonderful staff members who have put in time here and have had an effect on children. Those wonderful staff members will keep every penny that they deserve in this volatile situation, and they will be in classrooms doing something that they are trained to do and what they originally went in to do, and they will be there to support and affect our children. They will not have to move. They will not have to go somewhere else. And with that reflection, I'm like, well, what could possibly happen if we keep the librarians in those positions? Let's say we don't do that. Now we're looking at people losing jobs. Now we're looking at potentially having larger classroom sizes and asking staff members to serve more students in larger rooms and students not having that great contact that they need. Weighing those considerations out, it follows the bull's eye that we set in 2019. It follows what we've been talking about as a board, knowing that budget pressure was coming, that we wanted to have a process. You shared your process. You shared your meetings. You shared that you met with building and district administrators. You shared that this was going to do the three things that we wanted to keep center on there. And number one for me was keep reductions from significantly impacting students learning in the classroom. Will removing librarians from the library impact the library? 100%. It will not be the same experience. The school district is facing budget pressures. So what will be the least pressure on our students? To minimize the permanent loss of jobs by shifting current staff into open positions. I really do not want anyone in this environment that is the world right now to all of a sudden be without a job, especially when we're sitting in Ellensburg, which is a wonderful community, but it's very hard to find a job that's comparable in pay and stature and impact as our teachers do here. We're just not that big of a community. To reduce budgets equitably across most departments, including central office. You showed me the graph that central office is actually reducing the most across that, which is something that the board had agreed and said, we want to keep it away from student classrooms as much as we can. Because you did that, because you had a process and because the questions I asked and the answers I got and what I sat down and thought about, I do believe that the building and district administrators came to a decision that is rational and equitable. And I do stand with you on this decision. And I will continue to advocate and take these stories to Olympia because we do need to change the funding mechanism that is in our schools. But if we continue to fight in Ellensburg over the breadcrumbs that are on the floor, because we're not taking it to Olympia, because we're not telling the story about the prototypical model, because we're not saying, hey, COVID affected our communities really strongly, and we've got kids and families with reservations for whatever reason to come back into our public schools, we're going to lose valued members of our community. And it's not just teachers, it's our classified staff. But the budget pressure stands. The budget pressure is real, and we can say, well, not that person, that's this person. We need to make a decision that keeps that bullseye in mind. And then we need to do our work at this point. We need to go and advocate to Olympia, and we need to take it to the state, and we need to tell our story better, and we need to change funding for the way it is in schools. But I do stand with the decision of the district and building administrators to move the secondary librarians next year into classrooms.
Thanks, Tasha. I'm really glad that slide's up because I think what it did is it brought me back to 2019 when I stepped onto the board. I was brand new, stepping in a sea of red shirts. Most of those people being my friends at that time. And I think it's really hard. I'd say it's really hard for me because I remember, just like everyone else, like teachers deserve, and I'm glad, I guess in many ways, I'm really glad that the decision was made. Like they didn't strike. My understanding, a 22% salary increase over 2 years was settled. So 10% and 12% over the approximately, okay, we won't get into the numbers, but 22%. We're talking millions of dollars, right? I'm not going to point fingers. I think that was a great win for the district. I think it was. I think that teachers, we should be paying our teachers well. They do excellent work. They deserve that pay. But I remember a very clear message that I heard from the union president at that time that said the district, I wish I had the exact quote, because I know I'll probably get called on the carpet for this, but it was basically the district is hoarding money in their fund balance. And then tonight we had the next union president say, again, should we be looking at that fund balance? We had to put in a policy to say we can't go below our fund balance. We can't go in the red for this district. So what I would say is, looking back at that, like, I'm glad that we made that decision was made, that we're paying our teachers that. But they, again, sorry, I don't know why this is emotionally bothering me. I think it's just tough. I don't think people understand how hard it was to be on board through all of these changes, it's just like with the teachers, through COVID, like we've just kind of lost ourselves. Like we don't really want to work together. And that makes me really sad, right? Like, I feel like my teachers are my friends. I want to support them. But what I want to remind the community is that 22% increase, which is awesome, and it's something that board should celebrate. Those next 2 years, when the teachers were getting whatever it was over the 2-year period, that was when businesses in our district, in our community, were shut down. Our taxpayers that were paying those salaries, they were losing money. Their businesses were shutting down. There were furloughs at the university. Our community really hurt. And I'm glad to say, I will go on public record, I am glad that our teachers still got their raises while everybody else in the community was not in that boat. And also, if you think about how the teachers had to pivot and how hard it was on them, but also how hard it was on the community. So it's like, we've been through a lot. Like, this district has been through a lot. The teachers have been through a lot. The school boards have been a lot, the superintendents, everybody. And so I look forward to somehow where we can move forward with true solutions instead of finger pointing and trying to like say where we're not working together, because I really think we do need to be working together. So anyway, but going back to this, I'm glad that we made those decisions. I'm glad that we're there. But again, I don't know where I stand on this. I don't want to lose our librarians, but I also recognize these are all bad decisions, and we have to make the best bad decision with the financial. And I will repeat what you said. I don't think the board can micromanage the administration. There is no way we are possibly, nor any community member that comes up here and steps up and says that they know everything. They're not going to be able to dig into all of the pieces that Ginger and all the administration has to sift through to come up with that information. And so I look forward to more information. I want to continue to ask those questions. I believe the board, it's our duty to ask these hard questions, no matter how much flack people may say that we have these alternative agendas. I will say we don't get paid for what we do. I think we get paid often to just get yelled at. And so I will do that because I believe we're doing this for our community. So thank you for this report.
As a superintendent, I would say this. I would say that I work for you. I'm your only employee, right? And I would also say that, we've given a lot of information. I know we can talk more about it at the work session, but it is important to me that my actions, although making these decisions definitely fall under my purview, which I appreciate your saying and pointing out. But I would also say that I will, if the board as a whole said, Ginger, we want you to make a different decision around this, I would be very open to that, because I always want to make sure that my actions, because I work for you, are aligned with what the whole board is wanting, which in this case, would be probably like a 3-2 kind of thing. I'm not asking for a vote, but it's important to me to know how each board member feels ultimately on this. And are we going to say yes as a board and superintendent, we support this plan? Or are we going to say, let's look at this some more, which is what I think I heard you say, Jason, which is great. I think that our community has brought up some very important points, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm taking a tour of the CW library tomorrow, and I've talked with the Dean of Libraries, and I'm excited and I've learned a lot. And I do think librarians play an important role. And like you said, Jason, I think there's just some everything kind of is a hard decision, right? Because we're looking at budget cuts. The other thing that's hard is, and I pointed this out, is, we've got 2 mental health, we've got 2 family liaisons, we've got our deans of students, we've got our early literacy coordinator, to name a few positions that are being funded temporarily by ESSER. In 2 years, there's no more ESSER funds. So what does that mean? Does that mean we'll have enough in our budget? Possibly. If we get those 60 students back and we're back up to 3,200, or all of a sudden we have people that move in. I've talked with the city. The good news is they are saying that, yeah, we're going to have probably more people move in with the next 2 or 3 years. And so that would be great for us. If our enrollment goes up within the next 2 years, when the ESSER funds run out, there's a possibility that maybe we won't have to make so many hard decisions. I will say, and I shared this with you, that some of my colleagues are struggling right now because the law says that we need to be spending ESSER funds. And I've said this multiple times in board meetings. They're temporary funds, and they are really about looking at temporary types of positions or situations. And so I think we have to be really careful with ESSER funds, knowing that they're going to go away, knowing that we have all of these positions right now that our kids are benefiting from. And I think we have to think about that. We could gamble and say, you know what, we think another 2 years, the state or the federal government's going to throw more money at us. Well, that could happen, but everything that I'm hearing from our lobbyists with WASA and legislators is that, after McCleary, schools got their money, right? So we're kind of done with that. And the ESSER funds are federal funds, right? So that's pretty much aligns with what I think where state legislators are at. And I agree with you, Tasha. We need to ramp back up and start going back down. And I was appreciative of I know other persons here, where we took the drive to Olympia twice, right, Marco? And at 4 a.m. to get down there and talk to legislators. And I think that we need to do that again. So I think we'll have some important conversations to say, here's what we have left with ESSER. We'll have an exact number as much as we know right now with the number of employees that we have, that we put temporary funds for, that our kids are definitely or our MTSS coordinators, some of those are being funded by ESSER funds. And so, and that's why I've said we're going to reconsider reinstating the librarians, because I don't disagree. Everything that people have shared, I think that's true. I think they are very beneficial. And I think that, some of these other positions that we're going to have to make decisions around, whether or not we lose them because we lose ESSER funds or not, that'll be something we look at. I don't know, but I'm hearing that the Department of Health may be making a decision around whether or not they're going to require COVID-19 vaccines. Could that impact our enrollment? Perhaps. And so on top of all the regular complexities of the budget, we've got the pandemic. And yes, we've been able to take our masks off, but we heard Dr. Larson, 2 public meetings ago, that said it's not as easy as, yep, we're all taking our masks off and it's done. And there are medical professionals that are saying, we don't know what's going to happen. We kind of think COVID's going to reappear in some kind of form. Might be worse, might be better, or as far as not being as harmful in the fall and winter. And so, our job in serving you is to make sure that we have the most solvent, that we're being financially responsible, and there's always risk, right? And we understand that. But I think what I'm going to need from the board in the next work session is looking at this again, looking at what the risk factors are, and hearing from you as a board, what are the risks that you as a board want to take with ESSER funds, and also knowing that we just entered into negotiations with EEA. We also know that EAA salaries, which are administrators, are linked with teachers. And so we just have to keep, and all of those things will affect our budget. And I think that we just have to keep all of those factors in mind. And we're trying to do our best when we put together a reduction plan based on everything that I've gone through. I think this is my 3rd presentation about what we've gone through. And I'm willing to keep doing, answering questions. But I'm really going to ask from the board as a whole, where do you stand on this. And if you are disagreeing with librarians or anything else on there, then I want to have a conversation about that. I serve you. If the board as a whole says, you know, we want you to tweak on, we want to do this different, we want to reinstate librarians, and we want you to cut a social studies teacher from the high school, because we look at class sizes, maybe they're the next group that has the lower class sizes, then we could talk about that. Ultimately, it is my decision, but I, as a superintendent, serve you. And you as a board, if you feel differently, I will, you know, do what you guys want as a board because I serve you. But I am going to need each board member to really weigh in independently. And I'm hoping that'll be at our work session, or at least on the 20th, because, you know, I want to make sure that my actions as a superintendent are aligned with the intentions of the board.
Thank you, Ginger. Anyone else? I do appreciate that, Ginger, and I agree with you. I think I can probably put it in my report. I do think that we should include, I think we as a board, I appreciate, Tasha, that what you shared. And I think for me, I would just like a little bit more time to process all the information that I have received from many sources to put it together. And then I think I agree with you. I think the board, this really is Ginger's, this is your decision. We've heard a lot from the public, and we've heard a lot of information that isn't getting shared in public as well. So we have to take all of that into consideration, but I think that's a great idea that I think the board needs to say if we support or not. That's my opinion too. So.
You just have to know if we look at it some more, and I appreciate that we're taking time to ask some more questions and dive into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm fine with that too. We just are trying to serve the district and trying to keep, we serve our taxpayers, all of our taxpayers, and we want to make sure that we are as responsible with these funds as we can be. And I know that's my goal in serving you, is making sure that we stay, and not just for next year. And Kim's going to bring some financial examples to you that show what like a 3 and a 4 year projection are, which I think is kind of what you're asking for too, Madeline. And we'll be able to show some of that to you, which will also help better understand like next year and with all the positions, how that plays out across different years. So thank you, Jason. I appreciate that.
And Ginger, I know I have some more questions. I just misplaced my notes. So I'm sure I will come up with them again and we can discuss them at that study session, because that's primarily what we'll be doing. So I've got quite a few. So
I appreciate that. Questions are good, and it causes us all to dig deep. So, and I just really appreciate you guys as a board that you do ask questions, because I think that just helps us to dig deeper so that we can all make sure that we're doing our very best for our kids and for our staff.
Okay, board, then we're going to move to the next item. Our student is no longer here. Tasha, is there a teaching and learning report?
It's short. It's just reiteration that the State Board of Education is going to be doing their listening sessions. Once again, they are considering changing the high school diploma requirements, the transcript, and what we covered in our study session today. So the public hearing sessions are April 12th, April 20th, and then there's a student-specific one, May 3rd. Those are significant changes that they are potentially taking to the legislature in December. So once again, I'm going to reiterate that Ellensburg should have their voice heard in there. So consider logging in and telling the State Board of Education what you think. April 12th, and I can send it to you too. April 20th and May 3rd, and the State Board of Education, they have them on their website too.
Okay, thank you, Tasha. So for board chair update, I think I can just move that on down to the proposed items. For the way this all played out, I think it kind of changed my board chair update, because I think what I was going to talk about was really kind of board. We've heard a lot about the budget cuts and the librarian positions. And I think we've asked the administration a lot of questions and we've received a lot of feedback. And I think we're being called as a board to say, do we stand behind the decision or not? So I propose that that be on the item for our next board meeting. Maybe the study session can be where the questions would be, but I think maybe the actual board meeting that I don't know. We can talk about it more, but we can put it at least on the study session is what I would propose.
Can I also propose something else?
Please do.
And I would also propose that as we look at it, you know, maybe as we dig deeper, we find something that we all agree to that would be maybe a different approach or a different way of looking at it. And maybe that's something that could happen as well as a result of us getting together.
Are we, just for clarification, are we now moving to new business A or are we at meeting closing?
Thank you for clarifying. So because we have already done public comment.
Okay.
Right. So we have moved to 8A, new business proposed items for future consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I do have something to add on to that. And so board, I would like us to consider under policy 4110, the Citizen Advisory Committee, that we consider moving the Student and Learning Committee into a board-specific Citizen Advisory Committee and following that procedure. This would follow the work that was done around board ends, the amazing Seraphim Committee, the superintendent parent group that met during COVID, and the Boundary Committee. And that we really utilize this committee that would have its own agenda, its board liaison, and that the agenda would be embedded into our board docs agenda so we could have it review. This would only be an advisory committee, but we would get standing feedback. Lots of parents, or say a handful, I can't quantify it. Parents have said that they are afraid to come forward and do a public comment. They're afraid to speak to teachers or building principals because they're afraid that their students will get pushback. And so with this committee, we could have parents involved on it and students. And this was actually invited, I think it was February, March. It went out in the SMOR report.
Yep, it went out in my last ESD update, and our first meeting that we have right now is April 21st.
And so I would like us to consider formalizing that committee as a feedback group. I also feel quite strongly that when we are looking at the evolution of education, kind of what we looked at today, that if you think of our amazing graduates that are going to cross that line in June, when they were 2 years old, the things that did not exist, which was Facebook and YouTube and Venmo and Netflix and Zoom and Chromebooks. That was when they were 2 and they're graduating into a world that is just now commonplace. Education has to evolve. It should be a journey. And I don't think that one stakeholder group, neither the teachers or Ginger, the superintendent, or the board should have the only say on that, so that these parents and students and community members have a way to go and to research and explore and really grapple with and aspire on what is ESD's next journey for its evolution into this new volatile and quickly changing world.
Excellent. I agree. Thank you. Anything else for proposed items for future consideration, board? No? Okay. Anything for board calendar? Okay. Clarification and next steps. I'm assuming we have documents to sign. We always do. All right. So board, don't leave without signing documents. And with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I motion to adjourn.
I second the motion to adjourn.
Perfect. All right. For the record, Mike moved that we adjourn and Madeline seconded. We are now adjourned. Thank you.